Now we have all of the components, so basically around everything done. So what remains to be done now is basically bringing everything together in the third person character. Then we create a few abilities, and then we assign those abilities, and then we do a little bit of polish, and then we should be ready to do some testing to see if everything works. So let's go to our third person character. We can close down pretty much everything else here. And we go to our event graph. Now we have already done a bit of pre-work with the third person character. We've done some things along the lines of all the other things. So there won't be a whole lot of things to do here, but the few things that we need to do are generally going to be connected to this event begin play. First off, we need to create one variable that we will be building up here, which we will call user interface abilities. And this will be like we spoke about earlier, that we created in our widgets. So we have an integer, then we create it from a single variable to a map, and then we change the second type to be a BP ability object reference, like so. So now we have that done. So let's add our blueprint component that we created. So there you have the ability pool one. So now we have our ability pool. We drag out the reference from our ability pool and we say init, because we created a function in there which says initialize abilities, which will be creating all the different abilities and adding it to the functionality over there. Now, what we want to do is we want to bind some events from this actor, this blueprint component actor, because we want to have some listening done to when cooldowns happen. So we will do this, we will drag off here and we'll type bind ability cooldown end. This one we want. Hook it up like so. Do this, and then we can also do a bind cooldown start. So we want to listen to both of those because we don't make a whole lot of use of it in this particular project, but if you want to expand upon this, then it's always good to have these available. So the first one will create an event for add custom event. We'll call this one ability cooled down. So this is what happens when an ability has cooled down. And we already have our own event dispatchers, which is this one. So we can just call that one and say, whoever is interested, this just happened if you wanted to know. And then we do the same over here. We create an event, custom event, ability cooldown started, like so. And again, we have a non-event dispatcher we can use for that. So that's how we react by it. By being informed by the actor component, we are saying this character has had a specific ability on cooldown started or ended. In addition to that, we have created this available abilities earlier, if you remember, and we didn't have an actual use for it, but now we can actually set this because we're getting this over here. Like so. And now we're going to be making use of this. So in this specific case, we know that we're going to have 3 abilities. So we're just going to be doing a normal loop, which will go from 0 to 2, so 3 different items, like so. And we're going to be working with this. So again, 0, 1, and 2 are ability 1, 2, and 3. So we want to start building up our user interface with this. So we want to add to this dictionary. Each loop should be adding to this dictionary. the index of this loop will work as our integer key for this dictionary that we created. So it will be 0, 1, and 2, so it will be easy to keep track of. And the ability that we want to send in here, we need to get from this array of available abilities. And the ability that we want to get is going to be using the same index as we're currently looping on. And we're sending that one into the dictionary like so. Now, we're not completely done, but we're almost done now with this. What we want to do now is we want to have a small check, because we're going to be doing some user interface things now. So we can check locally controlled, because we only want to do this on clients. We want to now start creating our HUDs. So we can create widget, and we create our HUD, like so. And the owning player is going to be, let's see here, we get controller. Then we get the controller of the pawn, but this is going to be a generic controller, and this one wants to have a player controller. So we're going to have to cast this to a player controller. Like so that the user interface knows which player controller it should be showing the HUD for and who it's belonging to. Then we want to call on the HUD, because we created a function called set abilities, like so, and it takes in our UI abilities in here. And we have now created that dictionary for it to make use of, so now that one can be sent in there. After that, we want to start doing our scanning of players from our blueprint component, so we start doing that there. And then lastly, we can just, I could have done it earlier, I guess, but anyway, let's do it. Add viewport, we'll put it out over here. Like so. Now we're not completely done. We have a few more things we need to do. We're gonna be needing some inputs for actually activating these different abilities, and we're gonna be making this a little bit easier for us, because we're gonna just be putting them on some keys instead of creating some inputs. But if you want to do it the right way, you should of course make an input for this. But we'll just do keyboard 1, keyboard 2, and keyboard 3. So this will represent the inputs for activating our 3 different abilities that we have. Now we need to take our ability pool over here, and then we need to say usability, because remember, usability is the ability or the function that we're calling to from the outside world. So we'll make 3 copies of this, and we'll connect this with the target, and the ability index is going to be 0, 1, and 2 correspondingly, like that. And we hook them up. And that should be all we need for using our abilities. So the only thing we're lacking now is a little bit of polish when it comes to the actual widgets. Make them have I don't want to spend a lot of time on the polish, I just want it to make look decent, so we're going to be getting some icons for that. And we also need to start creating our actual abilities. So let's save everything so we don't lose anything in case something happens. So let us get ourselves some icons. So I will be providing a link down below to a site, this site, which has free icons for your game. I'm not entirely sure if these are available for use if you want to sell your product, but for use of just playing around and making projects yourself and having it as placeholders, they should be fine. And how this works is you can pick one of these different abilities, like this one for example, And then you can choose different things, like you can choose the color of the background and you can choose the color of the foreground. So if I wanted to have a blue character or a green character or something like that, I could do that, and then you just click download over here and you get the picture done. So I'm going to be picking 3 pictures, and then I'll see you once I'm done. So here I have decided upon 3 different icons. I'm just going to be dragging and dropping them into our folder. And you see that they're created as textures for us. So we just save them so we have them. And that should be pretty much everything we need now. Now we should be able to start working a little bit on our different abilities. So we go into our abilities folder. We have our ability child from before, remember? And we can duplicate this and we can call this ability launch. We open up the full blueprint editor. And the only thing we're really interested in here is we want to have the function that we're going to be using for our children when it comes to the abilities. Everything is going to be handled by the parents except for one thing, which is if we override and you find the use ability or the use event, this is the only one that we need to do something with. So let's say that this is going to be an ability that launches someone up into the air. So let's create a variable. We can call this launch power, and we'll give it a type of float. And we say if we use this ability, then we want to launch the character. So we have a third-person character that it's coming in here as a intended target, and third-person characters are allowed to be launched. So we can just type in launch character, and we get this little function available to us. And what we do here is we say, we can break this, split the struct pin, and then we can give our launch power something like, I don't know, 1500, something absurd. And then we say that it's going to launch us upwards by the strength of 1500. Why does it not want to? There you go. And by having done that, that's our ability pretty much done. It just needs a few more things. So if we click over here by the eye and click show inherited values, you can see, or variables, you can see that what we have available to us here from our parent. So you have an image icon, for example. So over here we can use, for example, the boot kick icon to represent what this is supposed to look like in the widget. And then we need to have a cooldown. We can have a different one here, or we can have the standard 5 one, for example. And then we need to pick an animation montage. And we have these 3 different ones available to us. So for me, I think I want to pick the one that is saying this one. Yeah, so let's save that one. And our first ability is done. Let's go jump in and do another one. So let's duplicate again, and let's call this force push, for example. So, and open that one up. Can remove this stuff, and we want to see our use event. So this one we can make a little bit more complex. We can, first of all, we can check if we have a valid target. We probably should have done that in the other one as well. Like so. And then we want to make some kind of calculations to what we want to do with this character. Because let's say we want to add an impulse to it. So add impulse, I don't get it from that. Add impulse. We want to put it on the character movement component, like so. So we want to have some kind of velocity calculated here. So what we can do is we can take our intended target's location, get actor location, and then we can subtract that. There minus vector. Then we can take the owner and we can get its actor location and use that as our subtracting. So we have a direction calculated now of which way it's supposed to go. And then we normalize this, so we just have something that's in between 0 and 1, and then we multiply this by whatever strength we want to have. So let's type in multiply, and let's say we want to have a float. We can promote this to a variable, and we can call this variable push strength, for example. You can of course choose whatever you want here. Let's compile that so we can set a default value, and let's set that value to over 9,000, like so. Give ourselves a little bit more room. And let's say now you might want to do this differently, of course, but let's say we want to have this only pushing sideways and not upwards, for example. Then we could break this vector. We'll get the individual components for it. And then we can go over here and we can say make a vector, which will mean we will get all the components needed to create the vector. And then we can just bring in the X and Y, which means that we would just be pushing it sideways and not in any direction upwards or downwards, for example. Now this is just me spitballing ideas. You might want to do this completely different, but this is the only place where you need to change something and it should be working. So now we're done with our second ability. So now we have created two abilities. Let's create our third and final ability for this. And let's make it a little bit different, because so far we've made things that affect other people. Let's do something that affects ourselves. So we can duplicate this and we will call this one ability teleport. Fan favorite. We open it up. We remove some events. We make sure that we get the actual function that we want, which is use. And from here we need to do some calculations. So first thing we can do is we can make a line trace. Line trace by channel, like so. And we want to have an origin point for it to start from, which is going to be our camera. Because that's the one that makes most sense for us. So what we do is we get the owner, get follow camera. Now that we have the camera, we can get its world location. And we use that as our starting point to trace from. Now we want to trace from this camera forward, so wherever it is looking. So we get the camera's forward vector, forward, that's not how you spell it, forward vector, like so. Now I have the direction forward, and let's say we want to multiply this. And the reason we want to multiply this is because we want to decide how far is this teleportation or line trace going to be going. So let's create a variable that says teleport distance and make it a float. Compile, and then we drag in the teleport distance as our multiplier over here. So we have our direction and we say we want to teleport this amount in that direction. What we need to do now is then add these two vectors together to get a result vector to see where that ends, and then we're done with that part. So now we just want to make some checks here to see, well, did we actually hit something? In the case that we don't hit something, so this line trace goes completely unobstructed, then we want to teleport to wherever that is. So we're going to be taking our owner, we're going to be setting actual location for this, and the location we're going to be setting for this is the destination here, the end that we calculated before. Then we're just going to clean this up a little bit. So. So that's what's going to happen then, but we want to click in the teleport part also because we're going to be teleporting. Now, in the case where we're actually being obstructed by something, we want to make sure where were we obstructed. So we're going to get our out hit result here, and we're going to be breaking that hit result. The reason for that is we want to have the location over here. This one we can again break. After that we can go back to our hit result here, and we can right click and do... no, we click on this little arrow, so it will minimize and take a little bit less space. And then we want to add to the Z. Now, the reason we want to add to the Z is in case we're teleporting down towards the ground, we want to make sure that our character is not going to be stuck in the middle of it. So I'm going to be adding here just 100, which means 1 meter, which should make it fine for our character because of its size currently. So this you might want to promote to a variable or calculate dynamically to have it properly done, but this will be fine hard-coded for now. And then we want to set an actor location again. And we want to make a vector like we learned to do earlier. And we take our Z from here, our X from here, and our Y from here. So that makes our new vector and our new location to go to. So this is what we will do if we're obstructed with our teleport. And that's how quickly we can make a teleport. Also, I need to quickly go back and make sure that we have, because we need to have an image icon, of course. We need to have jump across will be our teleport. Animation will be the block end for me. And that's probably fine. And did we enter a teleport distance? We did not. Let's put in something like 2000, which means 20 meters. And let's go back to our ability force push and see if we did everything here. We did not. So force push is going to be the push icon. This animation, we're going to be using the... not that one, we're going to be using this one. Okay, so now we have set the icons, the animations, everything like that. So all is good in the hood. Let's just do a quick test to see. Okay, so we can see that our icons are currently not loading in properly as they should. So let's fix that. And this is probably the reason why. Bind event to cooldown end. Okay, we have a multitude of problems we need to fix here. So we can start with our textures here then. It did not like... it didn't get an ability in here to read from. Okay. Now this, if I were to guess, would most likely be our blueprint component for abilities, because in the initialization of it we set up our abilities, remember? And we didn't have any abilities created when we did that. So let's start off with putting in a teleport as the first one, our launch as the second one, and our force push as the third one. Okay, dismiss this. Let's see if that works better. Okay, now you see that we have some icons down there. And if I were to press the first one, nothing happens. So we need to start looking at that. So we'll go into our third person character and we find our one key over here. We put a breakpoint over there. And yeah, let's see what happens. Okay, let's run. Let's press 1. We go into the usability. We try to get a target. We don't get a target because this is an ability that doesn't need a target even. And okay, I can see here we don't have a... we're not handling the casting here because we are allowed to use abilities even though we don't have a target. So we need to make sure that we're actually still trying to use the ability. We just don't set a local target for it to push forward here. So let's try that again. And let's press resume and you see something happened. Okay, so let's go and just press that again so I can get the ability, remove the breakpoint. Okay, so now you can see there in the down and the right, you can see that it has been a little bit grayed out and you had a timer. So if I press my 1 key, I will teleport. I did not teleport. The cooldown is working, but the teleporting is not working. So let's see if we get no errors. We need to debug this a little bit. Good thing is that line trace by channel can be used to make sure that we find something here. Also, in addition, this might actually be the problem. It might be hitting with itself. And that's one of the things I wanted to change also. I prefer a view where we get a little bit of a different view for the third person character. So I want to move the camera around a little bit. I generally don't like it when the character is too in the center and taking up too much of the space. So we're going to be doing this. We're going to be taking the follow camera. We're going to be putting it a little bit to the right, 100 let's say, and a little bit up so we get a little bit over the shoulder feeling for it. In addition to that, I also feel that we should be trying to implement some feeling of lag. There's something very easy you can do. First of all, we can change the length of the arm also, so it's 450 instead of 300, so it's a little bit further back. But you can also enable camera lag down here. What that does is it causes, if your character moves quickly, for example, the camera will lag a little bit behind. So if we lag 6 here as lag speed, that means that when we're teleporting, first of all, now we see that our character is moving around like this, and this is a nicer feel in my opinion at least. And now if we teleport, we can see that, okay, it's line tracing over there, but it didn't teleport. So we didn't actually see the camera lag this time. But let's find out why this is not working. Ability to teleport. Let's do this. Add a breakpoint. Run again. We press. Step over. We get a condition saying that we didn't hit anything, which doesn't seem correct, but okay. So it steps over and it says that its new location should be... Why am I not allowed to see the location? So this is the location. Okay, so let's see here. So my theory is, if we were to teleport and it doesn't get obstructed, then it's gonna be fine. So if we aim into the air, it's gonna say false, and it's gonna get a new location, which is whatever we projected, which seems reasonable. So now we're in the air, that makes sense. But it does not like it if we get obstructed at some point. So if we look down, we get a hit of true. We go over here and our new location is this. And the location is that plus 100 in Z, made into a vector, teleported, but it did not move. So the difference is this one works and this one does. Okay, I have forgot to put in the target over here. That would explain it. Let's try that again. So we're aiming down, getting a true, we're getting a location, resume, and now it looks like it teleported to where it should. So let's try that again and remove this breakpoint. So, okay, so we could teleport there, and we're teleporting over there. Okay, so now you can also see that it is playing the animation, which is very short for this specific one, and then when it gets to a certain point it teleports and then it resumes over there. Now the way this is made is that I can still press 1 while running and it will play the animation and the montage will play over the pose. We won't be spending any time cleaning that up, but you could make something like a blending of upper and lower body if you wanted to do something like that. I can leave a comment or a link to a description or a tutorial how to do that if you want to. Anyway, now we have the other abilities which play, and you can see that they have their own separate cooldowns which start when they activate, but currently they don't have a target to work on. And that is the next part we need to go to, because we get an error here saying launch character does not have a valid target. So this was what I talked about before. We should probably have a valid check on this one to make sure it tries to launch a character it actually can launch. So, but also if we go to a third-person character, we have a get current target which we never implemented. We created the interface very far back, and then we didn't do much about it. And the point of this one is the blueprint component that is the ability pool says it wants a target from the player. Now the player itself here, or this character, can present whichever target it wants to this call, because it's going to find this through the interface. But in our case we have this visual selection blueprint component which we also want to use together with the ability pool, but we don't want them to be interconnected in a way where they are dependent on each other. So that's why we have this interface as this layer in between. So in this call where we say get target actor, we can just say that we want from our visual selection to make sure to get our active target if we have one, which means that if we had a character in here which we were aiming towards, then that would be what we returned as our target actor. And if we didn't implement this visual selection, we could have some completely different code here, and it would work perfectly fine anyway, because we just need to give an actor here somehow. I hope that makes sense. That is all for this episode. Hope to see you in the next one. Keep on learning. Take care.